Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Anton Warnchuk in Baltimore. A Russian convoy of trucks carrying tons of humanitarian aid left on Tuesday for eastern Ukraine, where a humanitarian crisis emerged since the Kiev government launched what it calls an anti-terrorist operation against the pro-Russian armed rebellion that began in April, primarily in the Donetsk and Lugansk regions. Thousands are reported to be without water and electricity. But Kiev says it won't accept the vehicles crossing into its territory. With 45,000 Russian troops on the Ukrainian border, NATO said that there was a, quote, high probability that Moscow might now intervene militarily in Ukraine. Now joining us from Kiev to discuss this is Volodymyr Ishchenko. Volodymyr is a sociologist studying social protests in Ukraine. He is deputy director of the Center for Society Research in Kiev, an editor of Commons, Journal for Social Criticism, and a lecturer in the National University of Kiev Mohyla Academy. Thanks for joining us, Volodymyr.
Thank you.
So from Kiev, does it look like there's about to be Russian intervention in the eastern regions?
No, now it seems more probable, and this move with the humanitarian convoy is looking like a little bit dangerous. And this day there are kind of mass of very contradicting messages from Ukrainian government, Russian government, and Red Cross, and it's hardly doubtful that the Russia indeed concentrated the troops around Ukrainian border. It doesn't actually mean that they are really have a plan to intervene, but that they have a potential to do this. And another important thing that's actually the military situation in the eastern Ukraine has changed, and the rebels are in very critical situation now. When the Ukrainian army made quite important victories on the local level, and they really have a chance to circle and to cut Donetsk group of rebels from Lugansk group of rebels, and so cutting their supply and making their situation worse. So this might be a reaction to this military dynamics, but now it's very confusing.
Okay, and do you think you can give us a sense of what public opinion is in Ukraine now that the anti-terrorist operation, as Kiev calls it, has lasted now for months?
No, I haven't seen the polls results, so I cannot say how many percents of Ukrainian population are supporting or not supporting. If speaking about some anecdotal evidence, it seems that the population is not really supporting the mobilization to Ukrainian army, which the government announced several weeks ago, and taking to the army more and more young, and not only young, actually, young men. And there were a number of protests against mobilization commissions, especially in the Western Ukraine. And actually, this mobilization to the army has a very interesting class nature. They take to the army much less from the middle class people in the bigger cities, but they recruit in over in much larger ratio from, for example, from the villages, taking the poorer guys to the army, very often using the support of the local administration in the villages, or in case of the cities, they also sometimes use the support of factories, administrations, management. And in some cases, I was told that, for example, the management in one of industrial Ukrainian cities, Kryvyi Rih, actually send this draft cards to all the union members in that factory. So, like in good old times, recruitment to the army can be used for political repression as well against union activists in this case. And it appears that the war, which is now waged mostly it's not the only reason, but the oligarchs of Ukraine are actually making profits on this war quite directly. For example, Kolomoisky. Uh, this war is waged using the blood and power of quite poor guys, and this is quite interesting class division. And like in good old times, like a century ago, the poor people are dying for the rich people interests.
So, Volodymyr, you also recently wrote an article on the banning of the Communist Party of Ukraine. In the article, you wrote, quote, "This will be only the first step in outlawing most forms of genuine peaceful opposition in Ukraine." Can you talk about that?
Yes, that's an important case, and like for leftist progressive people in the world, it should be totally clear that the Communist Party is not a communist party. It's not a genuine leftist party. It's quite conservative, reactionary bourgeois Russian nationalist party, which was for the last at least 10 years more interested in cultural division, cultural wars in Ukraine, in the questions of language, even church split in Ukraine, than in social class issues. And this party voted anonymously for Yanukovych repressive laws on January 16, when not even all party of regions, the ruling party MPs voted for those laws. I would remind that those laws were a catalyst to the violent phase of Maidan and catalyzing the toppling down Yanukovych then. And the Communist Party was selling the positions in the electoral list to a grand bourgeoisie. For example, the richest woman in the parliament, Oksana Koletnik, was a member of Communist parliamentary group. But what is really important now that the Communist Party of Ukraine is not going to be banned for being reactionary, conservative, Russian nationalist, but for voicing opposition opinion against the anti-terrorist operation and other decisions of the government. And for example, in the official accusations voiced by the Ministry of Justice against the Communist Party, they say that I'm almost quoting, the Communist Party expressed overtly negative attitudes to the actions of Ukrainian military in the eastern Ukraine. So expressing overtly negative attitudes. And if interpreted literally, it means a quite plain and simple attack on the freedom of speech. And now very many Ukrainians are expressing these negative attitudes. And does it mean that they should be punished for this? And it's very important that this case, the Communist parliamentary group was disbanded some weeks ago, and the case to disband the Communist Party will be or should be taken to the court, and this court session should be somewhere in the middle of August. And all this case is going now in the framework of quite a large assault on the political freedoms in Ukraine, actually, which can be actually compared to those repressive laws on January 16 passed by the Yanukovych government, and which includes, for example, today was very important development, but this is not the only one, but only the peak of this. The parliament passed a bill in the first reading, not fully, but only in the first reading, but yet a bill. It's called on sanctions, and it was supposed to give a legal ground to establish sanctions primarily against Russian Federation, as other countries in EU and in the United States passed the sanctions following the Crimean annexation. But under this pretext, this bill includes a very large range of various repressive activities, which can be implemented on very abstract grounds and under no court decision. So, for example, they can ban mass media or disband a party or social movement under no court decision uh, if the if the Council for National Security and Defense will decide about this. And this National Security and Defense Council is actually a very narrow circle of people, of the top officials in Ukraine. Its constituency is decided by the president, and it includes the top officials from the law enforcement agencies, like the Minister of Defense, the Ministry of Interior, Security Service, Intelligence, also some officials who are responsible for economic security, like the Minister of Finance, the head of the National Bank, and this is not more than 15 people, and they can decide on these things, like to ban a party, to ban a mass media, to arrest the property without any court decision. And if the bill will be passed on Thursday in the second reading, it will be kind of creating a mechanism for establishing of full-scale dictatorship in Ukraine. And of course, for many people now in Ukraine, the patriotic feelings are very, very high. And they can justify many things under the threat of foreign invasion.
Well, do you think that this sanctions?
It's really important to see that this attack on the political freedoms cannot be justified with this Russian threat. It's really exceeding what can be justified in this situation. For example, it's under some suspicion of danger to national interest, that they can arrest property, ban mass media, disband movements, disband parties. And it doesn't even involve some real participation in the armed struggle. The grounds for the sanctions, as it's said in this law, are very abstract. As I said, it can be some things like real or even potential threat to national interest, to national security, sovereignty, or territorial integrity of Ukraine. You can put here very many things, even voicing some opposition opinions, and it's quite clear that the opposition media might be in danger after this law may be passed this week.
Well, as a lecturer at a university in Kiev, do you think that this sanctions bill can also be a threat to academic freedom?
Yes, but as I said, it's not the only development in this assault on political freedoms in Ukraine. Recently, Serhiy Kvit, who is the new Minister of Education, wrote a letter, official letter to university administrations, allowing them to sack university lecturers on the grounds of their immorality. They found a kind of article in the labor code of Ukraine where it's possible to sack lecturers, the lecturers and the teachers working in the schools and in the education sphere should be kind of like morality authorities. And it's also possible to sack them on this morality grounds. But what he makes is connecting this immorality thing, which can be interpreted very widely, huge space for interpretations. What is moral, what is immoral, it's totally clear. And Kvit connects this morality thing to the political position of those lecturers. And this is done under the pretext of that many, especially Eastern Ukrainian lecturers, supported separatist movement. And now he says that it's immoral to let them teach in the Ukrainian universities. But what is the problem, and actually the essence of this document, is that if a person participating in some, like, let's say, terrorist activity, in some armed struggle against the state, this person should be prosecuted by the security service or other law enforcement agencies. It should be taken to the court. The court to have proof that this person was actually breaking the law or participating in the armed struggle. And if they prove it, the punishment for this unlawful activity would definitely exclude any possibility to teach in the university. But why use university administrations against like a kind of as a kind of like repressive factor? Precisely for those people, for those lecturers who were not participated in any kind of real terrorist activity or organizing referenda, unlawful referenda in Donetsk and Lugansk regions, but precisely for those who are voicing some opposition opinions. And in this situation, they can be threatened, they can be blackmailed, and they can be punished without any court decision on that. They can be sacked from the universities, they can lose their job position. And of course, this is another mechanism of establishing censorship and repression in Ukraine.
Okay, Volodymyr Ishchenko, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.